Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. You're here today. We're talking about changes to business immigration in Sweden, and our webinar today is in collaboration with MindDig. I'm Sybil, and this is Hulda, our immigration expert today. Basically, what we're talking about today is immigration in Sweden and the new model that is coming from the migration agency in next year, 2024. And we're going to focus a little bit on the growth regions today, and that's category C and D. And we're going to give you a little bit of an outline just about the general process of applying for work permits as well. So all of you who have joined today, you are either employing someone or your employee, and you're a foreign talent. So you need to make sure that you're compliant to work in your role. Some of you might be here on student or family dependent permits, and some are on work permits. So we're going to focus on the new model from the migration agency and their way of structuring the work permit process and the consequences for stakeholders, employers, and employees in terms of lead time and service level.
We are, as representatives in the work permit process, experienced in submitting work permit applications, especially in the certified process, which is the current fast track. And as you know, people who are not from Sweden or the EU, they need a work permit to be allowed to work in Sweden. So this is very important for any employer to know when recruiting staff from outside of the EU. So we are going to talk about the new model today, and some of you will have applications that will probably end up in the fast track if you employ highly qualified staff. And I would just go through the 4 categories of this new model that the migration agency will implement from next year. And why they do this is because they have gotten the task from the government to facilitate for highly qualified labor immigration to Sweden. So they are trying to do this by implementing this new model, providing improved service to employers. They will establish, we don't know if they will establish new work permit units or if they would just restructure the work permit units. And they will also develop their IT systems to make the process a bit more smooth. So this is the first category that will be the new fast track, and it replaces the current certification system. The applications that will end up in this fast track are for highly qualified occupations, and the term highly qualified will be defined by the SSYK code of the which is a code for the occupation that the particular employee is going to have. And the SSYK is a Swedish standard for classification of occupations. And they are divided into 9 categories, where the top 3 categories or group of occupations will be the ones directing into the fast track. So we can see that the first one is for managerial occupations, second for occupations with requirements for advanced university competence, and third is for only higher education competence or equivalent. And then we have category B, and this is a category that seems to have been put in place because it has separate rules based on their own regulations. They are not normal work permits. We have the examples here, which you can see. Some of them are highly qualified, some are not. I would say that usually intra-corporate transferees, researchers, are considered as highly qualified based on what their SSYK code, but they will still end up in this if they fit for this type of permit. So the lead times for this category will depend on what type of permit. C is this category that will cover occupations that don't require a high level of academic competence. So they are non-highly qualified occupations. in sectors that don't require a particularly high level of case investigation, which is something that the migration agency does when they to make sure that all the criteria really will be met during the work permit period. We also have been informed that this category will include applications for employees of major new establishments in growth areas. Timeline for this category will be 4 months, according to the migration agency's goal.
And the last category?
Yes, so this is the category D. This is the last one, and it includes work permit applications for employments in industries that the migration agency wants to investigate a bit more in depth. And you can see the different industries that are in this category, and they, in brackets, you can see numbers, which is part of the SNI code, which is Swedish standard for industrial classification, and it's used to classify enterprises according to the activities that the company carries out.
Exactly. So the SSYK code is about the position, and the SNI code refers to the industry basically that the company works in.
Exactly. So both we have indications that both of these codes will have impact on how the migration agency will sort the applications that are submitted.
How might it affect an employer if they end up in category A, which is the fast track? But most importantly, what would make something end up in category A, the fast track?
So the criteria for category A are, first of all, that it's a normal work permit. It's not, for example, an ICT permit or a researcher permit or any other of the category B permits that I mentioned. The SSYK code starts with the number 1, 2, or 3, and the SSYK code has 4 digits in it. And the application is complete from the start, so there is no lack of information or documentation. If all these, let's say, 3 criteria are met, the migration agency's goal is that the case will be processed within 30 days from application to a decision is made.
Is there any news an employer should consider?
Yes, and the news are that there will be no pre-approval required to access the fast track, which is required today for the certification system. But that will be no longer a criteria. And there will also not be any lowest limit of how many applications a year can you submit in order to be able to access the fast track. So even if you submit 1 application a year and it's highly qualified and the criteria are met, you can get into category A. News is that categorization overall is based on a case-to-case assessment of each application, so it's not related to the employer's label or certificate. The employer can have several applications and they are in different categories theoretically. Okay. This is hopefully going to get us higher predictability when it comes to processing times and service level.
Sounds good. So how long we have to wait to a decision? I guess that should be 30 days, assuming it's a complete application.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we know right now.
What are some of the changes at the migration agency?
So to enable the new model, the migration agency will make some changes according to what they have communicated. There will be increased resources to processing work permit cases overall. If they haven't already started, they will have trainings of executive case officers to know how much to investigate and how to investigate, to make sure that they reach the 30-day limit of processing times. The current certificate units will be transformed into so-called international units, so it seems like the staff will be kept. They will still handle the work permit applications for category A, those who are used to the certificate applications. And they will introduce new service teams that will offer advice and support to employers and also to representatives such as us. To know how to think, to be able to get to the fast track and so on. The overall goal is, of course, to facilitate for employers recruiting highly qualified staff. So what we know.
So there seems to be a real importance on getting these permits done fast for the highly qualified staff.
They will try to work on all the cases they have in balance now to have no cases in balance when the new model is implemented, and any case that is still in balance when the new model is implemented, this is a little bit unclear, but will end up into category A if they were in the certificate.
How might it affect an employer if the case belongs to category C and D? Most importantly, I guess, what makes it end up there?
Like I said previously, to end up in category C or D, of course, it should not be a case that ends up in category B. So a normal work permit is what is required. And the SSYK code, category C at least, it starts with numbers 4, 5, or any digit up to 9. So it's not highly qualified according to the SSYK structure. Category D, it's more the SNI code of the company that decides. If it's an SNI code that directs the case into particular investigation, then category D. And I will also touch upon that, some gray zones. What if someone is highly qualified but will work in a company that ends up in category D?
And what would be the news for employers to consider that's different from before?
Most of all, I would say it's the processing time. So when this new model is implemented, they promise a 4-month processing time for any application, or up to 4 months, ideally speaking. But currently, for example, an extension application for someone in category D can take up to 2 years to get that application approved. And also we have, the category C is a news in itself, why the migration agency has decided to have not these two into one category, but to split them. And how long we have to wait for a decision, I've already told you.
About 4 months.
Yeah. Relates to the category C, basically, because applications for major new establishments in the growth regions will end up in category C. What they are doing at the migration agency is that they are currently working hard to set the process for category C. They have started to have a dialogue with employers in the growth regions, but also with representatives for employers with the goal to understand how the migration agency can work to adapt their process to employers' realities, to fit the process with how it works with new establishments, project plans, and so on.
So it's a good thing that they've made this category because they see that there is a need for it, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So it seems like the category C will get a higher service level than category D, even if some employers that might have an SNI code falling into category D, if they are part of or are a major new establishment in a growth region, then they will get a higher service level from the migration agency. Early dialogue is crucial, and that's also what the migration agency has told us. And they are actually encouraging us and employers to reach out to the migration agency, either directly or via representatives such as Human Entrance, to inform about employers' needs and realities so that they can create a structure that actually works. And what we know is that they have established a structure of informers, which is kind of coordinators or communicators that will be like a link between employers, representatives, the migration agency, case officers, the units, and embassies as well, because they need to be involved when it's a new permit. Also working in collaboration with internal teams that at the migration agency that develop their IT systems and to set the whole structure fits the needs. For example, they are currently looking at IT solutions for to fit needs in the northern region. So, for example, a major new establishment can consist of several entity numbers. So, like 4 different companies, but they are all intertwined and connected, and might need to employ staff together. How to solve that, because applications are currently on an entity number. They are divided between entity numbers, and how they look at employers.
It sounds like everything, they're working for us, basically. They're working to get employees here. They're working to make the processes better. So we like to hear that. We never know for sure how it's going to turn out, but the promise is good.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that this is because the government has asked or demanded from the migration agency to facilitate not only for highly qualified professionals to Sweden, but also for important companies or things going on that will have a good social impact or economic impact for the Swedish society.
I'm going to explain a little bit about the work permit application process in general. I'm going to hand her the clicker.
So first of all, you identify the need to recruit a talent, or you have already found a person that you want to hire. Then you need to check the person's citizenship, and if not Swedish or EU national, they will need a work permit, but they maybe already have a temporary residence permit in Sweden. Then you need to look, okay, what type of permit is this? Does it allow work? And if so, with any restrictions? So already here you can ask us for a short consultation to make this assessment for you to know if the person has right to work on the current permit, if it needs a permit, if she needs a permit, or not, and how to apply and what permit to apply for.
Yeah, because not all permits allow you to work here in Sweden.
Many permits do, like for dependent permits, student permits, and so on, but it's important to know the consequences of starting working if you have a student permit, for example, what happens with your student permits. So, so if a new work permit or a change of the conditions of a valid ongoing work permit is required, then you need to, in general, mostly I would say, you advertise the position. It must be published for 10 days, and it's important to not sign an employment contract before the ad has been posted for 10 days.
So even if you found someone, let's say you got a recruitment from someone you know, and you knew you were hiring, but maybe you didn't post the job, you need to still post the job even if you've already found the candidate.
Yes, and that's because it's a requirement that everyone in the EU, EEA, and Switzerland must be able to know that this job is available and accessible for them, and that's why.
And then don't sign the contract until after the job has finished its 10 days of posting.
Exactly.
Super important.
Yeah. When that has been done, you can ask us to prepare the application, to submit that for you. What will happen then is that we will send information about the employment to a trade union, a workers' union, which must legally get the chance to make a statement on the employment conditions. And they have 14 days to do so. So we might have to wait for 14 days before we can submit an application. Approximately 1 month after the service has been requested to us, we can submit the application based on the process up until now and how much time that usually requires. We can do it sooner, of course, but ideally this is the normal timeline. Category A, and the application is complete, which it is if we submit it. The decision is expected after 30 days, according to this new model. And for the other categories, C and D, I would say within 4 months. For category B, it depends on what type of permit. So for researchers, it's 60 days, or ICT permit is 90 days, according to Aliens Ordinance.
So basically, if someone was coming and they were in category A, we would need about 30 days and then there would be a 30-day time for approval. So basically, fingers crossed that the migration agency does what they're supposed to do. Essentially, it would take just 2 months.
Exactly. And then we will have to add that the employee needs to be able to travel here and start a position. And that will depend on whether he or she is visa-free or not.
Yeah, okay.
Passport check, that will also take place before a decision can be made. Submit a request to conclude. If the case takes longer than 4 months, they must close the case within 30 days in that case. And if visa-free, the person can travel to Sweden without the residence permit card, only with the passport. But if not, he or she needs to wait for the permit card to be delivered in the country of origin.
And you can find out if you're visa-free or not. There's a list on, I think it's the police website, isn't it? Or is it the migration?
I think it's the government.
The government website.
You can find it in different websites.
Yeah, so you always know if you're visa-free or not, or if you're hiring someone who's visa-free, that information is easily accessible.
Yeah. First of all, there must be an employment agreement. This is a new criteria since 2020. 1 or 2. Now I forgot. But anyway, the salary offered must be above the minimum salary level, and that has been raised now as per the 1st of November to currently 27,360 crowns a month. And this goes for no matter if the person is working part-time or full-time.
Okay.
This is a hard, like a threshold that it must be above in order to get a permit. This is the maintenance requirement for a work permit.
Okay.
The salary must not also be lower than collective bargaining agreement standards or standards in the specific industry or occupation. And the latter two, they must be proven by the employer that this is not worse than standards in this industry or occupation if it's lower than collective bargaining agreements. But it's hard to get a permit on that, those two, the latter two.
Okay.
Also, the insurances offered by employer, they are not worse than according to collective bargaining agreement standards, and they must be valid. They must be offered to get a permit. They must, of course, then be starting to get valid when the candidate starts working. And it's 4 types of insurances. It's life insurance, it's health, which is like sickness insurance, occupational injury insurance, and occupational pension insurance.
Okay.
According to the Swedish model. And the advertisement of the position must have been made. And then we have standard requirements that apply for all types of residence permits. That is, for example, having a valid passport and that the passport has been presented at the Swedish embassy for verification that the person actually has this passport and it looks like it's a real passport. Yes. In some instances, for example, in category D, they will also look at that the employer can afford to hire this employee for the upcoming 3 months. And that's part of the assessment that there is no doubt that the employee will actually come to Sweden and work for this position. So it's not a way to get someone into Sweden to do something else.
And the passport also has to be valid for the amount of time that the permit is going to be for.
Yeah, and if it's not valid for 2 years, which is the minimum, the general time you get the first permit for, the permit will be restricted to the validity of the passport.
Yeah.
For extension applications, to be able to get that, of course, you must apply before the previous permit expires. Otherwise, you need to leave Sweden and wait for the decision abroad. The candidate entered Sweden and started working in the position within 4 months from the permit start date, so the previous permit. All of the criteria to get a permit that I mentioned on the previous slide will be met for the next time period, and they were met during all of the previous period. The employee has only worked in the position and for the employer that the previous permit was issued for and restricted to. And that restriction is usually communicated on like page 3 or 4 or 5, like one of the last pages of the decision letter. So it's important to read the full decision letter.
Yeah.
It's also on the permit card.
Yeah, true.
And so for more information about this, you're welcome to reach out to us after the webinar.
So can you summarize then just shortly what the benefits are?
Yes, so the benefits of this new model, as we see it, is that it will be easier to structure hiring processes and estimate start dates if we can see that the model will actually work the way it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone hiring a highly qualified employee can access the fast track exception if the employer is in a category D industry. That's still unclear, but otherwise, yes. And for employers whose applications will not end up in category A, there are still benefits such as shorter overall lead times for all categories compared to before, and special focus on the growth region.
The most out of the new model, basically, you can apply for permits on your own as a company now. However, knowing what you need is super important to get the best time for a decision. So this is where we are here to help you. Of course, we can help fill out the applications, but we also offer consultations, risk assessments, just finding out what you need in order to get your foreign talent here the quickest and the easiest and the smoothest way possible. Be sure to follow us on LinkedIn because I think we will have another webinar later on when we have more information.
Yeah.
So like I said, we're really waiting for information on what does it mean to be a growth region, what's more important, the SSYK or the SNI code. There are several questions that we still have for the migration agency, and January 1st is approaching quickly, so we need to get these questions answered. LinkedIn is the best way to get our information the fastest, but we also send out newsletters, so you can sign up for our list on our website. Thank you guys so much for coming today, and also thank you for MindDig for collaborating with us today. So we'll be in touch soon. We wish you guys a wonderful day, and thanks for watching.
Thank you. Bye.